We're out here in rainy Grabo in the Western Cape, and I've got my second guest on the Overland Inspiration Show, Juba from Juba's Journeys, and we're going to be having a deep dive into his Land Rover Defender 110. This thing is awesome. You do not want to miss this. Welcome to a special episode of Roam Overlanding called Overland Inspiration. I take time to sit down with overlanders and outdoor enthusiasts who inspire me, and I hope that sharing their stories with you will give you ideas for your own vehicle build or give you the courage to head out somewhere special on your next adventure. On this episode, we get to take a look at a classic Land Rover Defender 110 with a couple of special tricks up its sleeve and see what its new owner, Juba, has been up to over the past couple of years. By the looks of it, this Defender has seen more of the world than most, and I'm sure it still has many more epic overland trips in it. So we decided to brave a rainy day out on the trail to see the Defender in its natural environment. Really started to pour down, so we figured it was time to stop for the day, set up this beast of a rig and dig into Juba's journey, but not before some hot coffee. First things first, Juba's just been on a 7-month journey around Southern Africa. So there's going to be a lot to unpack, that questions that I have, how you've managed to do this, why you've done this, and I mean, that's a big move. That's a really big move. It's a big inspirational move. I remember seeing one of the first videos you made where you kind of announced that you guys were quitting your jobs and you'd already committed to the trip by then.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what were you thinking? What kind of headspace were you in? What was happening in your life that made you decide, shit, I have to do this. I have to do this.
I think it's a little bit of everything. So the initial plan was to take an entire year off, my wife and I, just to spend time for ourselves. And then we kind of split the year up into 3 segments. The one being this overland trip in Africa, and then some time with friends and family, and some time abroad.
That means you get to really enjoy your time in places. You're not like jumping from place to place every day to squeeze it into a 2-week time frame. If you like a place and you're like, cool, let's spend 4 days here, or what was the longest time you spent in one place?
I think the longest time was about 5 nights in one place. But then again, also we spent a month in the Kalahari alone and a month in the Kruger alone.
Okay.
So the objective in the beginning was to spend as much time in wildlife parks, filming wildlife. Mm-hmm. And so that's how the tour was kind of structured. We booked pockets in parks, mm-hmm. and then the stretches in between was unplanned.
Okay.
And then obviously...
So you kind of had a point to get to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Except for when we left Namibia and went into Zambia, Malawi, we had no plans. Because that was not directed at being in wildlife. It was a little bit more going to experience cultures in different countries, with South Luangwa and Zambia being the wildlife component.
your setup is so simple, and it's really like your house on wheels. I mean, you're out of the elements, you're out of everything. This is such a special setup. Let's maybe talk about it a little bit, because, I mean, how did you find this vehicle?
So when I started searching for a vehicle, I've kind of always had this idea in my head that it would be great doing it in a Defender. But initially, the Defender wasn't the goal. It was the ultimate goal, but I would have settled for something else. So I spent a good 4 or 5 months just searching for vehicles. And I wouldn't go and look at a vehicle if I weren't 100% sure. And this was the first vehicle I went and looked at. And after the first day, it was also from the previous owner. It was kind of an interview process, you know. He didn't want to sell the vehicle to someone who's just going to drive it and resell it again. So I had to fit a certain profile before he would let go of the vehicle. Yeah.
No, I think that's cool. And I mean, considering that you've bought this thing done up, I mean, you could essentially drive it from there and go straight on your trip, or did you have to do a little bit of work on it and make some modifications and some changes?
I could basically drive it from there straight. The only thing that I did is I installed a bigger second battery and the solar system, and I redid some of the wiring. Okay. Yeah.
Now that's lucky. That's really lucky, because look, for me personally, my favorite thing is the build.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm such a geek when it comes to that. I'm sitting there online and I'm like, oh, and I want this thing and I want that thing, and then I'm gonna do this thing and then do that. And I love that transformation process. But I mean, for you're more about getting out into the bush and living and experiencing, you know, being out there.
Yes.
You're not so really, I mean, the build stuff it doesn't really faze you too much, or?
Yeah, look, if I bought a vehicle that wasn't as kitted as this, I would have built a lot of things myself.
Would you have had fun with it?
I definitely would. I mean, I enjoy working little things that would make things comfortable for you, little hook here, something there, a ratchet, whatever the case might be.
And do you have any plans for Mkulu going forward? Do you have any things you want to work on, or?
I've got minor things like changing the cutlery system on the rear door, small things like that. But the inside, I mean, it just works so nice. There's nothing I would really change. I think the only thing that might change is if at one stage you start having a family. I mean, this is a 2-seater. Then I might look at converting it back to a 4-seater, but yeah, that's in the future.
You've had a lot of experience doing overland travel, but doing 7 months is something else. I want to know, what are some things you thought were going to be so important to bring with you, but then you got out there, or you got to the end of your trip and you were like, these things were useless, we never used them, or you ended up throwing stuff out?
I've got an episode coming up on that, but I think it's difficult to say. Like, I carried 2 spare wheels the entire trip, and I didn't use one of them. But that's something I would carry with me again. So I think a lot of my recovery gear I didn't use, and that's a good thing. But generally, there was almost nothing that I didn't use except for my fishing rod. I had this ambition, and I thought I was going to sit next to a river somewhere and I'm going to fish a bit, but I just never got to it. So
that's pretty impressive, because I go away for a weekend and there's stuff where I'm like, why the hell did I bring this? Like, but I think that's the geeky thing about me, is like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to need this thing. I'm going to have to do, like, what if I get stuck there and I got to do this recovery, or I got to do this thing, or I got to do that? So I plan a lot of things, and I don't have a lot of space in my car. But now with you obviously having a lot of space, you've got a lot of stuff. You're doing a lot of traveling. Now, how are you storing all your stuff? Because this is not a traditional kind of build, especially in South Africa. You know, maybe more in Europe, people will see a lot of Defenders and things like this. But now, for you, how is everything stored in here? How do you access everything? You know, run over your kind of setup, your, you know, kind of get to camp and set up.
The easy part is just popping the roof. And then generally we get a fire started. And our setup on the inside is, you got a central, like a little passage, if you would call it, and you have a bench, and you have the fridge, and then you've got cupboards. So we basically, in the start of the trip, we kind of divided our cupboards up into, we either have our food, we've got some spices, we've got all what do you call it, flour for bread, all your oils, all those kind of things. So a full kitchen, and then there's a small section where we had our clothes, and the rest was recovery gear, camping equipment, tent pegs, stuff like that. Yeah.
To just kind of divide it up amongst everything and all that. Would you have preferred having an outdoor setup on your trip?
I liked the setup inside because then what we had outside was literally just a small little table and chairs. So, and most of the time we spent outside. So we also very clean campers. So we like a very minimalistic type thing outside, where you get sometimes, especially if you're in a group, people can just pile stuff on tables, you know, just a lot of stuff. But our setup is everything's got a fixed place. So you work out of the vehicle, you've got very limited stuff outside. And especially if you're traveling long term, you must know you can't make a mess. You know, you can't leave your mess for the next day. So
you have to, otherwise it just gets out of control.
Every day you make sure you wash your cups, you get everything back into its place. Because otherwise it's, you're going to run into some trouble.
Is there anything you'd add to the space or take away?
Not really. I mean, we've got 2 plates in there as well. We've only used it once or twice. You could maybe just do with one little plate. But then again, that space on top there, it's sufficient. So it's not like you need to take something away to make space for something else. And I mean, we got a water system.
So how many liters of water do you have?
Can take about 60 liters of water.
60. And do you keep that all drinking water, or do you just keep that river water, whatever water you have, you just put in there?
Look, throughout the whole trip, we kept it drinking water. So some of the campsites has got potable water. So then I'd fill up the tanks with that. But otherwise, I'd buy in bulk in the cities.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that works. And then, I mean, in other liquids, your fuel, stuff like that, how many liters are you carrying with you? This is quite a big vehicle, so...
Yeah, so there's 3 tanks. The one is a gravity feed into the main tank. And then I've got a 3rd tank underneath the driver that I've got a little switch with a pump that pumps back into the main tank.
Okay, and that puts you at
It puts about 150 liters
150 liters.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot. And this is the 2.5?
2.4.
2.4, so this is the Puma?
Yes.
Wow, okay. That's nice. This thing's value must be climbing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's nice. How do you find your fuel consumption?
I must say, throughout the whole trip, we averaged on about 7.5 kilometers per liter.
That's really not bad.
Yes, that's really not bad, especially if you're considering the roof rack was full.
Yeah.
But then obviously
This isn't turbocharged, eh?
Yes.
It is turbocharged.
Yes.
Wow.
And the worst fuel consumption was 5.5 kilometers per liter, and that was in the Mabua section, heavy sand. Yes.
Because I mean, I think I'm getting 12.5 liters per 100. That's around 8 k's per liter, somewhere around there. Considering what you're carrying, considering where you can go and what you can do with this vehicle, that is phenomenal fuel consumption.
Yes, but then you must also take into account that you're not doing a 2 weeks trip where you rush between campsites to get to all the places you want to be. So I generally had a rule that we wouldn't do more than 400 kilometers per day, and we try to stay at each place at least 2 nights, unless it's really a stopover. So we were traveling very slow. I almost never went above 100 kilometers per hour. So we were just crawling away, taking it very easy, stopping, taking pictures. And I think that helped a lot with the fuel consumption.
But I mean, that's nice because, and that's something that I would love to try and do. I just don't get enough time to be able to travel like that. But the 400 kilometer rule is a big thing, because especially if you're stopping and filming, I think it's something that a lot of people don't understand when you're a traveling content creator.
Yeah.
Everything takes longer. You need to plan things to be slower. But at the same time, were you filming every single day, or did you give yourself a break every now and then?
I always made sure that the cameras were charged and ready to go every morning. I was quite religious about that, being that dropping all my footage getting it stored in the right format, and the next day that you could start again. I think it's important that if you're doing a long trip like that and you want to film, because as soon as you start lacking that, then you just do it the next day or do it.
Car's full,
Yeah.
and you miss out on footage,
Yes.
or battery's dead and there's the lions.
especially with wildlife, you have to be ready every single second. So that's also why the lenses between Jackie and I, we'd switch it, so you'd have one with big lens on and one that you could film right here, so that when you get that moment, you're ready for action. We had 2 DSLRs, 2 GoPros, and 1 drone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a journey of a lifetime. It really is a journey of a lifetime. Story that you'll be telling, people for years to come. And I think, now it's a bit of a tricky thing now, because it's, what do you do next? Where do you go from that? And I think that's something that, I wonder now also as a content creator, you've kind of set this level. And obviously you've got all this content that's going to be coming out, all of these videos that are unreleased still. I mean, once you run out of that runway, what's next for Juba's Journeys?
I think for the near future, it'll be adventures in and around Cape Town and the Western Cape. I mean, there's so much to do here, and not everybody can go and do an Overland trip like this. So I'd like to show people what you can do, maybe in a day or 2 days, weekend adventures, weekend warriors. But there's lots of good things that you can do. But it's getting out of the city, getting into the bush.
When people get into overlanding or camping or just adventuring in general, it's a bug that bites you, that's so difficult to explain to people who aren't interested in it.
Carrying your house and everything that you need with you the whole time, there's a great sense of comfort in that, knowing that you can stop anywhere and you'll be fine for the evening. Or hopefully next time we can go and camp somewhere, do some overlanding.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for kind of sitting down with me and sharing some of the information about your trip, about your vehicle, and all of that stuff. And I really hope you guys will go through and check out more of his stuff on his YouTube channel. There's going to be a lot of videos coming up, so it's definitely worth heading over there, subscribing to his channel, checking out what he's been up to. And are there any other places where people can find you on social media? Or?
I'm at the handle Juba's Journey, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
If you enjoyed this episode of Overland Inspiration, please comment down below and let me know who else you'd want me to sit down with and have a chat to. But as always, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like the video, and we'll see you on the next adventure.